Last Sunday, we spent our time together reflecting on what home means to us, about how home is a sense of belonging, of comfort, that home can be a person, a place, a community, or even a faith. But the poem I just shared expresses that for some, home is not a rosy, safe sense of belonging or a place of comfort. Instead, this poem asks, what do we do when home means suffering? When it means violence and danger? Sheer invites us to put ourselves in the shoes of those who have screwed their courage to the sticking place. It asks us to see the humanity in those who have dared to hope for something better, and in doing so have sacrificed everything they have ever known. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. 2 months ago, I woke up to the story of a 6-year-old Honduran boy, his 9-year-old sister, and their mother being detained by ICE agents as they exited an asylum hearing in Los Angeles. The mother had applied to come to the U.S. the year prior, having fled Honduras because of the daily threats of violence that she experienced there. She'd been paroled and following the legal pathway laid out before her, but was detained along with her children anyway. What struck me about this story was not that there were children being taken from their home and placed in a detainment center, not even that this occurred as they were legally working the path laid out before them, both already egregious ethical issues. What struck me was that the 6-year-old child had an aggressive form of leukemia, and his month-plus detainment meant a lack of pain management options and missing important medical appointments. As I continued to read the story, my horror deepened. Here I quote from an article by the Texas Public Radio. The children were crying in fear. One of the agents at one point lifted up his shirt, which displayed the gun that he was carrying, the attorney said. The 6-year-old boy was terrified. He urinated on himself and wet all of his clothing, and no one offered him a change of clothing for many hours. You have to understand that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. If we hadn't been paying attention to much of modern history, the dehumanization of immigrants might seem like a shocking new political trend. But in reality, immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers have long been bipartisanly the scapegoat for a struggling society's woes. However, xenophobia like this is especially present when fascism is on the rise. A bully never picks a fight with the strongest kid in class. Likewise, a fascist government points in the direction of those most vulnerable, those who have the least power and safety in the system, and blames them. The current administration has enacted a travel ban for those seeking immigration to the U.S. from 19 countries and has maintained an almost total and indefinite ban on refugees to the U.S. since earlier this year. This includes closing and completely defunding organizations that provide a social safety net for those who were already legally accepted into the country. We are watching a prime example of not just the rise of white Christian nationalism, as evidenced by increasingly more xenophobic laws and hateful rhetoric. We're also witnessing what it means to pull the ladder up behind you. The sad irony being that aside from indigenous communities, we're all here because of our ancestors' decision to immigrate or seek religious refuge, with the exception of those who were brought here against their will. Just as easily as we have forgotten this fact, we have forgotten that the Statue of Liberty reads, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." It does not read, "Give me only your oligarchs, your college-educated, your light-skinned and bored tourists. Give me your tired, your poor, the homeless and tempest-tossed. This is the very best of us. We welcome people, we feed them, we educate them, and we allow for their pursuit of happiness. And in turn, they do the same for the next generation. But the paperwork is not as simple as it once was when the Statue of Liberty greeted every immigrant and refugee to the U.S. The process to enter the U.S. as a refugee, as an asylum seeker, or as an immigrant is arduous, often requiring years' worth of hearings, thousands of dollars, extensive paperwork, and coordinated support networks. As you can imagine, this makes it incredibly challenging to go the legal route. And as we're seeing now, even when you go through the legal route, it still lands you in detainment often, and even deported to third-party countries. Many believe that it's worth the risk, however, and so still they come hoping, like the family of that 6-year-old boy, that the American spirit of hospitality and generosity has not died completely. And we are better for them being here. Those who come to America build businesses, share their cultures, and benefit the U.S. economy. Refugees alone contributed $581 billion in tax dollars revenue between 2005 and 2019. So many of our first and second generation immigrants and refugees become some of our most accomplished and well-respected citizens, like Madeleine Albright, Hannah Arendt, Albert Einstein, Claude Levi-Strauss, Sergey Brin, Joseph Pulitzer, yes, that Pulitzer. These are human beings whom, without the generosity and compassion from us, might not have lived to become who they did. They added beauty to the tapestry of our country, making it a richer, sweeter place to live. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck feeding on newspaper unless the miles traveled means more than the journey. So why talk about this? About a subject so contentious and politically fraught in a church during worship? The dehumanization of migrants is a humanitarian concern, an ethical concern, and equally as central and important a spiritual concern. The timeless universality of human movement across lands and oceans and of refugees escaping persecution are well thought out themes addressed by most religions in one form or another. The Torah commands whole cities be built by those seeking refuge, for those seeking refuge. In the Gospel of Matthew, we read, "Now when they had gone, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, 'Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him.' So Joseph got up and took the child and his mother while it was still night and left for Egypt." Jesus as refugee. Perhaps this is why he aligns himself with those impoverished, estranged, and suffering later on in that famous verse from Matthew 25:35 through 40, which begins, "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat." In the Quran, we see calls for justice and compassion for refugees. In fact, the third pillar of Islam is zakah, a recognition that all wealth is a blessing, and with it comes the absolute responsibility to help those in need. His Holiness the Dalai Lama said in an interview several years ago that he considers himself a senior refugee, having remained in exile from Tibet since 1959. As such, he remains invested in the well-being and acceptance of refugees in Europe and the US. He says, "Put the interests of humanity first, above all other things, because that is what unifies us with one another." His words mirror the humanist response to the cry of migrants and refugees. Pierre Galland, the former president of the European Humanist Federation, says, "We believe that refugees and migrants are first and foremost human beings, who hold human rights and should be treated as such. They not only contribute economically and demographically to our societies, they bring with them new cultures and traditions that contribute to a rich and diverse society. Certainly, this same foundation is where our values as Unitarian Universalists enter the discussion. Our faith is very clear. Nearly every one of our 7 values speaks to this issue. Our value of justice requires that we work toward, and I quote, diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where everyone can thrive. And our value of equity requires that we recognize the inherent dignity and the right for all to flourish and thrive. Not just exist, not just scrape by, not just to suffer, but to flourish and thrive. No one crawls under fences. No one wants to be beaten, pitied. No one chooses refugee camps or prison because prison is safer than a city of fire. No one could take it. No one could stomach it. No one's skin would be tough enough. As politicians and political influencers close their hearts, minds, and our borders to a certain type of refugee and immigrant, and by that I want to be super clear, I mean refugees and immigrants with darker skin than myself, and those who practice faiths outside of Christianity and Judaism. It becomes clearer to those paying attention, and this is not simply hyperbole, that we are in the discernment of the nature of this country's soul. For what does it cost to turn our backs to others crying out in desperation? What does it cost us to cheer on a place like Alligator Alcatraz? Or continue to fund and empower the masked vigilantes who disappear anyone they personally deem unworthy, if it does not cost us that which is most precious, our own humanity, our belief that we are kind, that we are good, that we are interconnected at our very core. Whether you believe in a metaphysical soul or not, the center of your goodness, your conscience, the part that makes you you, the part that makes us us, the part that is our spirit, this is at stake. And when we advocate to close our borders or we create an environment of terror and fear for those within them, there is no flourishing or thriving possible for anyone. We are left instead with a tall wall protecting the remnants of our withering spirits. And no one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore, unless home told you to quicken your legs, leave your clothes behind, crawl through the desert, wade through the oceans, drown, save, be hunger, beg. In each faith I've mentioned, the answer to the cries of migrants and refugees is clear, despite whatever social, political, or economic realities that might complicate the process. It is our place as faithful people to call one another back to love. Most of us would agree with the Dalai Lama's words when he famously said, "We cannot solve this problem only through prayer." I am a Buddhist and I believe in praying, but humans have created this problem. And now we are asking God to solve it. It is illogical. God would say, solve it yourself because you started it in the first place. It is our place as Unitarian Universalists who have long believed that it is not enough to offer our prayers in the face of suffering and injustice. We must pair our theology, our faith, with our action. As most of you know, this summer was filled with at least 2 large-scale ICE raids in Nashville. Parents were too scared to send their children to school, to go to work, to support their families, or even attend their immigration hearings. Our mayor decried the raids, demanding more transparency and promoting a fund to support the families of those placed in custody. As a result, the Department of Homeland Security has opened an investigation into the mayor and said it will keep an even closer eye on Nashville. So how do we help? How do we live our values out loud? Thankfully, this congregation has an immigration task force, a team that is part of the solution. I've asked this team to share their work in the multitude of ways that we can support them and the larger immigration organizations in the area after service today. I hope you will join their efforts as we all learn to better love and protect our neighbors. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of the gun, and no one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore. That 6-year-old boy, his big sister, and their mother could be any of us. There, but for the grace of God, go I. He could be my son. She could be my mother. It could be your children or you one day fleeing. That family could be our family. For the sake of our souls, and for the sake of those individuals at the center of this moral crisis, let us never become a home that says, leave, run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.